Hello and welcome to the Growth Project. Dr. Milt Lowder here today with Cory Shaffer. Excited about today's topic and episode that we have in front of you. But just a reminder, if this is your first time listening, one, thank you so much for joining the podcast. It's called the Growth Project. At AMPLOS, we are a performance psychology practice. And why we exist and why we do what we do is to help you be better and pursue better. We are focused on optimizing who you are and what you do and trying to find that balance. And what we've learned over our time and years of working with high performers and helping create championship cultures, that the best companies, the best organizations, the people that are finding quote unquote success in this world are balancing well-being and performance pretty well. The Growth Project is an extension of what we do in our quest to be relevant and interested and encouraging to you and to be a partner in your process of growth. So thanks for listening. If you enjoy what you find, please like us.
Yeah, like us, rate us, review us.
Ask questions. It's much more impactful when you're asking questions and we're providing topics that are relevant to you. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of what we do. So today's topic is really just a check-in. You know, the research suggests, Cory, that hey, we get all fired up, all inspired around these New Year's resolutions and got a tons of energy and everybody's doing it and we taper off pretty quickly. And we want today's episode to be a way for you just to check in, or maybe you're one of those people that didn't set goals, to kind of give you a chance before the year is over to minimize that regret that comes up that says, man, I should have done this or I should have done that.
Yeah, it just feels like an appropriate time of year. We're in the middle of June to press pause, to take a step back and take stock of where we're at about 6 months in. I think that's kind of the purpose of today. And so talking a little bit about, I think, just setting the stage for, as you noted, just, well, what are some of the common problems with how we even get to this point of the year and maybe don't make as much progress as we'd like? But then moving forward, what are a few tangible things that I can do to start, hopefully get myself back on track and onto a new path, a more productive path, the back 6 months of the year. And so when December rolls around, I'm looking back at the year in a completely different way compared to if I continue on this trajectory I'm on right now without pausing and slowing down and taking that step back. I'm probably not really where I want to be in December. And I think that's the point of today's conversation.
And so you talk about those common problems. What would you say is one of the common problems why people haven't made the progress they hope to make at this point in the year?
Well, I think you mentioned one, which is probably the lowest hanging fruit here, is like they never really determined or defined what they wanted to do to begin with.
Yeah.
They never clearly set any goals for themselves. That's probably the best starting point.
Yeah, and I would even go at a higher level than that, kind of before you even set the goals. What we often find, and we talk about the importance of vision, people lack clarity around the vision for their life. They spend a lot of time trying to live up to those expectations of others and really don't spend any meaningful time thinking about who do I want to be? How do I want to be? What is really important to me? What do I want to accomplish? And to me, that's the underpinning and foundation of not only what I'm trying to accomplish this year, but what am I trying to accomplish in my life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So why are people not doing that though?
One, I don't even think they understand the importance of it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lack of awareness of that, how the brain works to paint a picture from a position of strength of who you want to be. That what we've learned and what we know is if I'm not clear about who I want to be, then my brain develops a picture of who I don't want to be. And so there's this lack of awareness, lack of knowledge, lack of really meaningful reflection, answering some, we don't think they're difficult questions,
Mm-hmm.
but they're thought-provoking questions.
Yep.
And I think sometimes that fear of asking those questions or not even knowing what questions to ask keeps people from taking that action.
Yeah, I think maybe people think about this kind of stuff, but the disconnect is they sort of assume, well, if I just keep showing up, to my job every day, if I just sort of keep doing what I'm doing, like I'll get there.
Yeah.
But without the true intent or purpose behind, like, no, this is really something that I want. Not just something I'm sort of hoping for. Like, no, I really want this thing in my life, or this is how I want my life to look or to be. And so they just keep showing up, kind of going through the motions, sort of floating in the wind and being pulled around by life
Yes.
instead of, well, no, there are some things that I have some control over here, and I can dictate at least how I'm showing up and hopefully influence the rate, the pace, the trajectory that I'm going on. There's still going to be all those outside forces at play, um, but the purpose and the intention with which I'm now bringing to my life is just different.
Yeah. Yeah. The word that kept coming to mind as you were talking is we tend to be passive
Mhm.
bystanders in this thing called life. We let other people define who we want to be, set limits on what we should be doing, um, set expectations that we try to live up to. We live ourselves, our life in comparison of others. And as we're doing that, we automatically kind of set limits on who we can become. And really, as you said, we create an external locus of control that we realize we really fail to realize we can have some purpose, we can move the needle, we can put the odds in our favor by really just taking a stance and saying, no, this is who I really want to become. These are the things that really matter. This is what I really want. And as we always say, once I'm able to understand what I really want and who I really want to be, then I know what I'm willing to give up to get it.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with you. I think at its core, the biggest overarching thing is probably that, like, just lack of vision and really almost any direction
Yeah.
on where you're headed in life. From there, then, if I haven't done that,
Yeah.
I'm certainly not setting goals for what I want to accomplish on a shorter term and with more specificity, which are typically what goals are going to bring.
Yeah, and I think what we've learned, especially in some of the work we've been doing with these companies on these long continuing journeys of growth, the goal setting exercise that we really do, uh, most of the feedback we're getting, people's like, yeah, I should know how to do this or I should be doing this, but they aren't doing it,
Mhm.
and it's a little confusing, and we there's so many things they want to try to do that they just kind of sit back and wait for the company to say, well, here's your goal for the year, and they think that's what they're pursuing.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, within that, it's funny because of everything that we teach. Goal setting's not any different. Where people assume that because they sit through a couple of workshops that they should have just mastered goal setting. When again, it's like anything is, we can sort of give you the framework. Like you've got to go do it
Yeah.
and practice it. And so to sit down and just write some goals one time and be like, man, I don't know if it went the way I really wanted it to. I don't think I'm good or I'm getting better at this goal setting thing. It's like, well, when have you done anything one time and mastered it? So I think people tend to give up on the process because it is challenging. It feels so conceptually simple
Yes, I think that's part of it.
to learn the framework or whatever it is, to put it all on paper, but then really to like live it out, to see it through, to kind of take some of the lumps and lessons learned that often come even just with the process of setting goals and then iterate it and try to make it better, the next quarter, the next 6 months, the next year, whatever. That's how you're going to get better at it.
Yeah.
Just like anything else. Right? But people aren't it's strange people aren't like open to it because once they feel like, well, I did it and I didn't achieve the goals I set out to do, like so they just get this bad taste in their
Yes.
mouth about the whole process of setting goals.
Partly because, Corey, as you said, it's so conceptually simple.
Yeah.
I think people think, well, I should be able to do this. I should be good at this. Everybody, and we kind of get this line, everybody sets goals. Everybody knows how. We get that kind of feedback. Oh,
Mhm.
gosh, another session on goal setting. And so that kind of, I don't know if it's shame, I don't know if it's fear, I don't know if it's anxiety of something that really seems simple, but it's a little bit more complex and it's not instantaneous.
Yeah.
And so when I don't get instant gratification, I don't get instant feedback, especially today's world, we're just going to give up on it and kind of keep doing what we've always done.
Yeah. And again, and a lot of the time the mistakes are made in just the process of setting goals to begin with. Like it has nothing to do
Yeah.
with your goals are often just fine. But for example, if you set 10 different goals and you're trying to do 10 different things, you're probably going to be really average or make marginal progress in 10 areas instead of if you just set one, I bet you can accomplish it.
So use that analogy real quick of what you're saying, because I've heard you teach around the lion tamer.
Yeah.
with the chair and the 4-prong stool. So why does he do that or she do that as
Yeah,
a lion
so
tamer?
once upon a time, and you can look this up, but just picture a lion tamer. Oftentimes, they would use a chair in the process of taming a lion, and the reason for that was pretty simple, was because the four legs on the chair, that's what's facing the lion. The lion has intent to pounce, right? But it almost gets confused. It can't decide which of the four legs of the chair to attack, and so it ultimately just sits down.
Yeah.
Like it's distracted by too many things going on. It can't decide which way it wants to go, and the indecision leads it to do nothing. And to your point, then, like, that tends to be how we set goals. Like, I've got these 4, 5, 6, 7 plus different areas of my life that I want to just start crushing it in. Right? I want to go 0 to 100 in all these different places. It's like there's still only 24 hours in a day. Like, how are you finding the time to dedicate to all of these different things? And I think that, again, is part of the problem. Is people might even have outlined like a great system or a great process of goals, but just because they're trying to do so many things, they end up really being mediocre in all of them.
Yeah. Anxiety leads to inaction. You
Right.
know, that either I just become passive like the lion and I just withdraw and just kind of go through the motions, or I become very focused on the one thing that is clear. And what we see for most people, that tends to be their job goals or their job expectations. Like
Mhm.
like all this other stuff I'm not quite sure about, but I know I have to do this. So I put all my effort and energy into that. So we're starting to see some of these common problems. I don't have a clear vision, don't have a clear game plan. I don't even set goals, or if I do, I set too many goals, or I have the wrong process. And so those, like, we're going to give you some tips of hitting the reset button halfway through. But for those of you who sat down and have a clear vision and listen to maybe a podcast on goal setting and set some goals, and you kind of are feeling right now is, man, I hadn't looked at those in a while, or I haven't hit the mark, or I haven't even really reviewed or reflected upon what's happening. What would your advice be for that group?
Well, I mean, I guess for one, if we're going to talk about the biggest overarching problem here, is like we tend to not have a vision. All right. So let's assume you have some idea of where you're headed in life. Okay. That's kind of an assumption I guess we need to make. Um, I think it's useful, just step one is, like I mentioned from the start, take a step back here, like press pause and just review the first 6 months of the
Yes.
year. And I would always start, and I would encourage, our listeners to do the same. You certainly heard me talk on, if you're one who tunes in regularly, we've talked about reflection and evaluation and these different things, but I think it's really important to at least start with, even if you don't feel great 6 months in, well, what is working? Like, hunt the good stuff first and foremost. And where do you feel like you are making some progress? Where are you proud of, how you just show up every day? Where do you feel like you're at your best over the course of your day to day? And again, that can be work. Hopefully, that's also outside of work with family, personal life, and so on. But I would start there and not take note of just like, well, I think I'm doing really well at work, period. But why and how? Like, what is different about this 6 months than maybe previously, that you're taking note and saying, I think it's going pretty good right now. Like, something is different. And that might be, you got a new CRM tool and that's really helping you. Well, great. I think it's important to write that down to
Yeah, be
reinforce it.
specific.
But if it's, hey, I've just kind of changed my mindset and how I show up to work, well, that's really important.
Yes.
And the point is, again, the better we understand the process of what's working for us, well, I can replicate that process moving forward. That is within my control. And so now when I start shifting, or when I do eventually shift to the next 6 months of the year, I already have pieces of the puzzle that I want to put in place. Like, hey, I don't need to necessarily do anything different in these areas. I think I'm doing really well there. I just got to keep it up.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's always a useful starting point. Let's look back, hunt the good stuff, find out what is working. Then we can shift to where your brain wants to go right out of the gate. Like, what's not working? Where am I struggling? Where am I not making as much progress? Where do I not feel like myself? And more specifically than all of those things, again, is how or why. Like, what's getting in the way?
Yeah.
What are the challenges? What are the obstacles that are preventing you from making progress or preventing you from showing up the way that you want to? And that can be difficult. That can be hard. to write down, because it's forcing you to be vulnerable and honest with yourself. But really, really important, I think, if you're going to do something different and make a change moving forward for the next 6 months.
And I think the spirit with what I hear you saying and what we like to teach is the lens and mindset of your reflection, that it is evaluation instead of criticism. And our brain naturally wants to criticize ourselves and others. And what I've been paying attention to, that curiosity is a great antidote to criticism. And so if you can separate who you are from what you do, and that's why reflecting and getting it on paper,
Mm-hmm.
and starting with the good. As you said, our brains are wired to focus on the bad. So you can evaluate, which opens up the brain for possibilities. It lets you be curious about, hey, why? Why is this going better? Or why am I struggling? And sets you up for success in terms that it helps you separate who you are from what you do. Where that spirit of criticism, that spirit of judgment really sets limits on your willingness to grow and take action and be courageous. And I think it limits creativity. It limits innovation, and it stifles growth. And so as you reflect back, your little tool, hunt the good, what's going well, what's working and why, what if, and it's hard sometimes because we want to be humble. The language I love, like, what are you proud of?
Mm.
And it's hard for us sometimes to really say, well, this is what I'm proud of, because it may be simple. It may be something you should have been doing, and you're 50 years old, and this is something your parents taught you in kindergarten, and you haven't done it in 45 years. It can feel a little silly to say, well, I'm proud that I'm doing this every day.
Mm-hmm.
But what does that do to the brain? What does that do about the learning centers of the brain? What's that do to the dopamine? What's it do to catching you doing something right? Why is that so important to hunt the good?
I mean, again, we're just wired in such a way where it's so much easier for, especially if you're listening to the podcast, I'm probably going to lump you into a category of high performers. High performers, high achievers, naturally, you're so geared towards just like, I want it to be perfect. And
Yeah.
that's always going to start with, then I'm not going to focus on the 98% that's good. I want to focus and clean up the 2% that's bad. And so inherently, a lot of people, at least a lot of the people that we spend time with, that's just how they're thinking naturally. And in a lot of ways, unfortunately, that's how we're taught to think, right? So to sort of, I guess, to combat that, to sort of go against the grain, I think it's really important. And, the science, I think, does agree with this, related to things like gratitude and that, right? Like, you have to train your brain to find the good.
Yeah.
Or it's always going to be fixated on the bad. And so to start the process by acknowledging that, hey, it's not all bad here. In fact, if I really try hard, there's probably a lot more good than there is bad. The bad stuff might stand out to me more, but I tend to take so much for granted. And this is my opportunity to take stock of all those things. Now think at the position that we're shifting gears into, like, okay, now let's look at what isn't working. But it's coming from, as you would say, like, such a position of strength.
Yeah.
Right? Like, man, there's a lot that's really working for me here. There's a lot that's going well, and I can appreciate that. Hey, now I wonder what's not working.
Yeah, I wonder. Well, be curious.
Right.
Yeah, I wonder what's not working. And then now we got a chance to really say, okay, well, what have I learned? And what changes do I want to make? I think even taking the word need to out of it, because that kind of adds pressure. Again, that anxiety creates inaction. Like, what have I learned, and what do I want to do differently? What do I want to keep doing, or what do I want to stop doing? There's a lot of different ways. Once you get that information, what would you want people to ask?
Yeah, again, now is the point where, like, I've captured enough information where I can start to put a game plan together. And again, I don't think it's probably worthwhile necessarily to focus on 100 different things, but a couple simple things I can put into place. And again, we're saying that, like, hey, I want the next 6 months of the year to look a little bit different in these ways. But I think, my ultimate suggestion would be, well, just focus on the next 3 months, right? And maybe set a more tangible goal around something. But beyond that, I think the biggest mistake that people tend to make in this area is they go too long without checking in.
Yeah.
Again, we're doing this at 6 months. It's too long.
Yeah.
Right? My suggestion would be...
It's better than not doing it.
Agreed. Yeah. Agreed. Quarterly is better than yearly or twice a year. But I think the right kind of cadence, and everybody can sort of figure this out for themselves, and we want to empower you to do that. But I think monthly is a really good cadence.
Yeah.
Because enough can happen over the course of 4 weeks where you can experience some real tangible wins, and you can also experience there are probably some situations or some events where just, hey, some things popped up that got in the way. I got in my own way. Here's some challenges or some things that I've learned. And the point is, the more frequently that you're reflecting, right, the harder it is to get too far off track.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the point, is like,
So
even
good.
if I set the vision or set the goals or whatever it is, but if I don't look at them again until December, imagine how far off track you can get in 12 months. A lot happens in 12 months. But start chopping that up now. Okay, I'm going to get a little less off track quarterly. Still don't think that's good enough. Monthly, yeah, I can maybe take a couple steps off my path, my intended path. But if every 4 weeks I'm checking in really quickly, and it's easy to step back on. But if I've gone 6 months or 9 months or a year,
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
hard.
it is so difficult to feel like I'm even starting back at a point that's helpful.
Yeah, you're starting all over again for the most part.
Correct. Yeah.
So I'm going to give a public service announcement, if I may pause this podcast for just a public service announcement. You don't know where I'm going, do you?
Nope.
You said, hey, training our brain, we've often been taught this way. One of the things my family did, with our children each night at around the dinner table, this spirit of evaluation, hunting the good, asking each child, each person at the dinner table, what went well today? What didn't go well today? What did you learn? What are you thankful for? So that public service announcement, you can not only start training yourself to hunt the good each day, you can start training your children in a different way. You can create it with your team at work. You can start every meeting just with this spirit of evaluation, because what we wanted our children to learn at a young age, each day something good's going to happen, something bad's going to happen, and through it all, you have a chance to learn and grow. And for that, there's a lot to be grateful for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do it with my son. We've been doing it since he was probably about a year and a half. And every night when we put him to bed, we read him a couple of books. And then the last thing he does is we just ask him what he's grateful for.
Unbelievable.
And what's really cool, though, and this is the point, is like, it's not just about him, because we empower him to ask us.
Yeah.
And oftentimes he wants to hear from us before he answers it himself. So he'll say, Mommy, what are you grateful for? And my wife will answer and say, Daddy, what are you grateful for? And I'll answer, and then he'll give us his answer. But the point is, trying to reinforce that habit in him, or build that habit in him, reinforces the habit for us.
Yeah.
So that, yes, and on a small kind of a micro scale, those are simple ways that you can start building this beyond some sort of a reflection or evaluation process that you have in place. That's a daily practice. Now, when I show up to do my monthly, think about how much easier it is for me to first and foremost start with what's working.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because I've been doing this every day.
And imagine for your children when they start trying to do this, or for your team, that you've already trained the brain to do it in the right way.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I love that you started with Cam at such a young age, because we want to say, oh, well, he can't do that. Well, look how much that's become part of his life.
Yeah.
And what a different mindset he's going to have, because he's hunting the good and being grateful.
And again, I mean, his answers in a year and a half have changed quite a bit. They're getting better, more aligned to what we would hope to hear from him. But it doesn't matter. The point is, keep asking the question, and he's starting to connect the dots. And so
the simple things in life sometimes bring the most joy.
Yeah.
Sometimes as human beings, as adults, we can grow and our expectations increase, and we forget to be grateful for the little things, for the common things. Okay, so thanks for giving me that time for that public service announcement. A great way to reinforce and create habits. So going forward, we've got the different groups. One, I don't have a clear vision. I've lived my life trying to live up to the expectations of others. I don't have a clear vision. I don't have a clear purpose. I don't have a clear why. Within that scope, I don't have goals that I've operationalized. I'm just kind of going through living up to those expectations. Two is, maybe I have a clear vision with an idea of who I want to be and what I want to accomplish, but I didn't start out the year with goals. I didn't write them down, so I'm not quite sure where I am. Three, I have vision, I have goals, and I get to the halfway point, and maybe I haven't reviewed or haven't evaluated.
Yep.
So we have a lot of different people coming to this podcast with a different heart, different spirit, different lens. How do we what advice would you give to say, let's make sure we don't get to December and have the same issues?
I mean, yeah, again, step one, recap the first 6 months of the year, regardless of which, bucket or which group you might feel that you fall into. Two, is work to set, I guess, some more specific, more tangible goals. Uh, and I would start with just one.
Yeah.
And that might be, again, just some really simple outcome you're seeking to achieve. From there, I think it's always useful, or more recently, how I've been thinking about this and talking about this. If you want to, the example I'll give, like if you want to run a marathon, think about the primary action involved in that process. You probably need to run, right? So I think, and again, this is where we tend to almost like skip a step. So what is it that I want to accomplish? What are the key actions, the key verbs, or the key behaviors involved? And just start jotting some of those down.
Yeah.
Well, so if I want to run a marathon, New York City Marathon in November, okay, what are some of the key actions? Well, I need to be running or training in some capacity, maybe cross training, stretching, just taking care of my body. Maybe my nutrition's important, so that will impact my diet. Sleep and recovery is going to be important, right? So just a very short list of behaviors. Now I can start to look at my calendar and go like, okay, realistically, how much time am I going to be able to dedicate to these things, right? Like the primary one being like running and training or whatever. Like, okay, yeah, either early in the morning for a lot of people, or once I put the kids to bed at night or whatever, that's going to be my time to train. Realistically, I think I can do that X number of days a week. Here are going to be my off days. Like you're already starting to create yourself a more tangible game plan. And once, let's say you've done that with some of these key behaviors, I think probably the next best thing that you can do is set a reminder so that August 1st, like you get that pops up on your phone or your computer or whatever, and just asks you to check in.
Yeah.
What kind of progress have you made?
Yeah.
Where are you at after just 1 month?
Yeah.
And again, I maybe that example isn't the best example.
Well, let's take that example and say most people may be listening to us are going to run a marathon, but a lot of people say, I want to be more grateful. Okay, well, what's the primary verb you got to do? Is you got to practice gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe that's just writing three things down each day you're grateful for. Maybe it's asking your child each night, hey, what are you grateful for today?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so those, like, what's the thing you got to do? What's the primary thing you have to do in order to accomplish that goal? Big picture, what I want you to really struggle with is what's the primary thing you have to do to be the person you want to be?
Sure.
And think about those verbs, think about those actions. Let that clarify your vision, inform your goals, and commit to the process. Last thing before we wrap up here, what about inviting some accountability? We know growth cannot occur in isolation, that we need people in our life to encourage us. What would you say about people trying to do this on their own, or how many people should I invite in, or who should I invite in? What would you?
Yeah, my suggestion is first and foremost, get started first. Like make some progress, even if it means going at it alone. And again, all of that's going to be contingent on, do you have a good enough process in place to follow? It should not be based on how motivated you are, and it should be more based on just these are behaviors aligned to the person that I'm trying to become, as you described.
Yeah, you glossed over that about motivation. Sometimes we can misinterpret motivation and think it should be this.
Yeah, I mean, it's not always, you're not always getting, again, why do people 6 months in, so many people gave up on goals and this and that? Well, because they're motivated and all have all this energy on January 1st. And by January 3rd or January 10th or February 1st, it's gone.
Yeah.
And so that's the problem with relying on motivation, is it's so temporary and fleeting and, tends to go, come and go. You're better off, again, just designing, these are specific behaviors that I want to engage in. I've put them into my calendar and try to, weave them into my life with some specificity aligned to who I'm trying to become. That's what I mean by just having like a system and a process in place. But doing that and then having a system to sort of check back in, again, a month from now, I think is probably the way that you make the most progress.
Yeah. Yeah. And so think about who's that person that you can invite into your life. As Cory said, get going. And then that monthly check-in.
Well, yeah. So sorry, I got off track here. The accountability piece, get started. Okay. Get started and make some progress. And then invite in, a person or two, like let them know what you're trying to accomplish. These should be people in your life you feel like will be honest with you, give you good feedback. What's not very helpful is just trying to invite anybody and everybody into that process, because I guess what the research is showing is that just the kind of the dopamine hit that you get from just talking about your goals, people get excited about you, and then you just want to talk about them and not do them.
Hey, Cory, I'm gonna run a marathon.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I would get started, make some progress, and then invite just one or two key people in, let them know what you're trying to accomplish. That in terms of accountability is my suggestion.
Yeah, great. And what I'm going to say right now may not be something we can do, but if you are in the group that have not set a clear vision, have not gone through a goal setting process, have not identified clear values, what we'll try to do, or at least mention, are the podcast episodes that we've done in the past that talks about setting vision, that talks about goal setting, that talks about your year-end review and evaluation. So try to give you some more resources if you're in that group that have not. If you are, and you just hadn't checked in, then I hope today's conversation really kind of lets you look at it from a position of strength. Hunt the good. What are you doing well? What are you really proud of? What's not going well? Underneath both of those questions are why. And okay, what have you learned to help you move the ball forward, to help you become closer or draw closer to who you really want to be and what you really want to accomplish? Other final thoughts or comments from you?
No, that's it. Again, I think just giving yourself some grace, and if you try this process now, then hopefully going into Q4 it looks a little bit better, and then Q1 of next year it looks a little bit better. Like, it takes time, even just to nail and feel like you're going about the goal setting process in a way that's really helpful and meets your needs. So I think it's important to acknowledge that, and understand that this is potentially just iteration one of goal setting for you, and that's okay. I've personally done this for years, and I feel like I'm getting better, but do I have it completely mastered? Probably not, and that's okay. I think that's the point, though, is this shouldn't be something that we shy away from because it's hard, or because it's complex, or because we failed at it in the past. We should just be striving to improve it. So now these mid-year checkpoints are so much more effective because my whole entire goal setting process is improving every time I do it. So that would be just final thoughts from me.
Yeah, I love taking the pressure off and just get started. And awareness without action only increases your level of anxiety and frustration and disappointment. So we hope you found today's message or podcast relevant. Please send us some success stories. What's working, what's not working. We are strengthened and encouraged and inspired by your progress, and want to continue to provide you information that is relevant to who you want to be and who you are, and help you be better and pursue better. So thanks for listening.